I want to talk to you today about a brand new Brazilian Chevy Spark EUV that's everything that I want in a small electric vehicle and probably what other Americans want too. What's happening, Panda Nation? Pete here. I want to talk about the new Brazilian Chevy Spark EUV. It's affordable at $13,000. It's ruggedly handsome, like me, with serious utility, and more spacious than you'd expect. But thanks to trade wars, tariffs, and market forces, this perfect little truck will never make it to American shores. So let's dive into why this Chinese-built, Brazilian-bound EV represents exactly what the US market is missing, and why we will certainly never see this vehicle in America. In a factory in Luzhou, China, 650 units of what might be America's most wanted vehicle just rolled off the production line. But instead of heading to Los Angeles or Detroit, these compact electric trucks are sailing towards Brazil. At $13,000, this isn't just an electric truck, it's a revelation. Meet the Chevy Spark EUV, the small, tough, practical electric truck that America probably wants but can never have. This is the story of the perfect storm that keeps the most sensible electric vehicle off our roads. To understand why the Spark EUV matters, we need to understand what's happening in America right now. We're experiencing what industry analysts call peak truck, the moment when Americans finally start questioning whether they really need a $60,000 F-150. The average new truck in America now costs nearly $60,000. The average SUV, almost $48,000. Meanwhile, the few cars left on dealer lots average just over $39,000. But here's the kicker. Most Americans use their massive vehicles for exactly the same things that the much smaller vehicles could handle. According to the Department of Transportation, the average American trip is just under 3 miles. We're using 2-ton trucks to travel distances a golf cart could handle, and we're paying luxury car prices for the privilege. Enter the Chevy Spark EUV. At just under 13 feet long, it's shorter than a Honda Civic. But don't let that size fool you. This thing is engineered like a tiny tank. It's got that square-jawed, no-nonsense styling that Americans associate with serious trucks, just shrunk down to a sensible size. Inside, it's got more usable space than you'd expect. The high seating position gives you that commanding view Americans love, while the boxy design maximizes every cubic inch. The rear seats actually fold down to create a surprisingly large cargo area. It's like someone took a Chevy Tahoe and put it in the dryer but somehow made it more practical. The 249-mile range isn't going to win any EV Olympics, but for those 3-mile average trips, it's completely overkill. You could drive it for a week without plugging it in. The 41.9 kilowatt-hour battery charges from 30 to 80% in just 35 minutes, which is faster than most people can grab lunch. But here's where it gets really interesting. In Brazil, this thing will likely cost around $13,000. To put that in perspective, the cheapest EV you can buy in America right now is the Nissan Leaf, starting at about $28,000. The cheapest electric SUV, the Chevy Bolt EUV, which ironically shares part of its name with our forbidden fruit, starts at around $34,000. The Spark EUV isn't just cheaper, it's less than half the price of anything remotely comparable in the US market, the Chinese connection. But to understand the Spark EUV, we need to travel to its birthplace in China, where it lives a double life. In its home market, this vehicle is called the Baojun Yacht Plus, and it's part of a fascinating experiment in automotive minimalism. Baojun, which literally translates to precious horse, is owned by SAIC GM Wuling, a joint venture between Japanese SAIC, American General Motors, and Chinese Wuling. It's a partnership that's produced some of the world's most practical small electric vehicles. The original Baojun Yacht is genuinely weird in the best possible way. It's a tiny 3-door SUV that looks like a miniature Land Rover Defender, which I totally dig. The Yacht Plus, our Spark EUV, is the practical evolution. 5 doors instead of 3, more cargo space and a longer wheelbase. But it keeps that chunky utilitarian aesthetic that makes it look like it could climb mountains or kind of large hills, even though it's designed for city streets. In China, vehicles like this make perfect sense. Cities are dense, parking is at a premium, and the government actively encourages electric vehicle adoption. The Yacht Plus starts at just under 94,000 yuan, which converts to about $13,000, making it accessible to a huge swath of the population. But here's where the story gets complex. The Yacht Plus isn't just cheap because of lower labor costs. It's cheap because it's engineered from the ground up to be simple, efficient, and manufacturable. The single rear-mounted motor produces 101 horsepower, not a lot by American standards, but plenty for urban mobility. The top speed is limited to 93 miles per hour, which sounds slow until you realize that most city driving rarely exceeds 35 miles per hour. Compare this to American EVs, which often pack in hundreds of horsepower, complex all-wheel drive systems, and luxury features that most buyers never use. A Tesla Model Y has 384 horsepower, which I also think is pretty cool, but you probably don't need it. To accelerate faster from one red light to the next, it's probably not something everyone's going to do. The Chinese approach is radical in its simplicity: build exactly what people need, nothing more, nothing less. The Great Tariff Wall. So why can't Americans buy this sensible little truck? Well, the answer lies in a trade war that's been brewing for over 6 years, and it's about to get a lot more complicated. In May 2024, President Biden announced that tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles would jump from 25% to a staggering 100%. That means a $13,000 Spark EUV would cost $26,000 before it even reaches a dealer, assuming it could get here at all. The stated goal is protecting American jobs. James Benson Jr., a Ford worker for 26 years, has watched 3 plants close and others downsize as imports gained market share. "I was a devout Democrat my whole life and I got nothing out of it," Benson told Bloomberg. "Nobody has done anything to stop the decline until now." It's hard to argue with Benson's frustration. The American auto industry has been hollowed out by decades of outsourcing, and workers have paid the price. But the tariffs reveal an uncomfortable truth. American automakers aren't losing to Chinese companies because of unfair trade practices alone. They're losing because Chinese companies are building better products for less money. Take the BYD Seagull, which sells for around $12,000 in China. Industry experts who have driven it describe it as impressive and cute. It's not a golf cart with doors. It's a legitimate car that just happens to be affordable. Meanwhile, the average American EV costs over $50,000. The cheapest Tesla is $47,000. Even the upcoming affordable Chevy Bolt replacement is expected to start around $30,000. The result? Countries open to Chinese EVs are seeing explosive growth in electric vehicle adoption. Brazil's EV sales increased by over 500% from 2022 to 2024. Thailand saw 279% growth. Australia, which cut EV tariffs to zero in 2022, is experiencing a 145% increase. America, protected by its tariff wall, saw EV sales grow by just 6.6% in 2024. The Mexican Backdoor. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Those tariffs only apply to vehicles imported directly from China. There's a giant loophole in the form of Mexico, and Chinese automakers are already eyeing it. Under the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, ironically negotiated by the Trump administration, vehicles assembled in Mexico can enter the US with much lower tariffs or even duty-free, provided they meet certain requirements. BYD has already announced plans for a massive factory in Turkey that will serve both European and Turkish markets. Other Chinese automakers are reportedly studying Mexico as a potential manufacturing base for their North American sales. It's a cat-and-mouse game of global trade. Chinese companies build the engineering and design expertise, establish manufacturing in countries with favorable trade relationships with the US, and suddenly those protected American workers are competing with the same Chinese technology just assembled somewhere else. American policymakers are already scrambling to close these loopholes. There's talk of banning Chinese EVs entirely on national security grounds, regardless of where they're assembled. The reasoning? Modern cars are computers on wheels, and those computers could theoretically be used for surveillance or worse. It's not entirely paranoid. Every EV is connected to the internet, and data privacy in cars is largely unregulated. But it's also a convenient excuse to block competition that's simply better and cheaper. What America is missing. To understand what America is giving up, you need to understand what the Spark EUV represents, a complete rethinking of what a car should be. Despite being dramatically smaller than American trucks and SUVs, the Spark EUV offers surprising interior space. The high roofline and minimal dashboard create an airy feeling that many larger vehicles can't match. The rear seats, despite being in a compact vehicle, offer decent legroom for adults. The cargo area, while not massive, is smartly designed. The square shape and low load floor make it easy to pack efficiently. You're not going to haul lumber, but for groceries, luggage, and even moving apartment furniture, it's more capable than it looks. But the real magic happens in urban environments. The Spark EUV can park in places that would challenge Mini Cooper. It can navigate narrow streets that send full-size trucks searching for alternate routes. In cities where parking costs $30 a day and spaces are measured in inches, size becomes a superpower. And then there's efficiency. The Spark EUV's small size and lightweight mean it uses dramatically less energy than American EVs. While a Model Y consumes about 28 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, the Spark EV uses roughly 12.6. That's more than twice as efficient. For context, that efficiency difference means the Spark EV's lifetime environmental impact is dramatically lower than larger EVs, even accounting for the same battery chemistry. It requires 11 to 20 times fewer critical materials than conventional electric cars. American car industry veterans note that vehicles like the Spark EUV would likely find audience among demographics that automakers have largely abandoned. Elderly drivers who want something easier to get in and out of than a sedan, but less intimidating than a full-size SUV. Young families who need space but can't afford a $40,000 electric crossover. In the same market that made the Honda Element, the Kia Soul, and the Nissan Cube cult favorites before they were discontinued in favor of more profitable, larger vehicles. The Brazilian experiment. While Americans debate trade policy, Brazilians are about to get their hands on what might be the most sensible electric vehicle ever mass-produced. The Spark EUV represents GM's largest investment in Brazil in years, part of a 7 billion real commitment to electrification in South America. GM Brazil has even tailored the vehicle specifically for local tastes, offering 6 colors inspired by Brazilian culture: Atlantic Blue, Cupuaçu White, Canary Yellow, Redeemer Gray, Indigo Blue, and River Black. Most feature two-tone styling with black roofs, giving the little truck an even more rugged appearance. Brazil's growing EV infrastructure and government incentives make it an ideal testing ground for affordable electric vehicles. If the Spark EUV succeeds there, it could prove that there's a massive global market for simple, affordable electric transportation. Industry analysts predict that Brazil could become one of the world's largest EV markets within the next decade, partly because it's not saddled with legacy costs and expectations that have made American EVs so expensive. Wrap up. The Brazilian Chevy Spark EUV represents everything that's wrong with American automotive policy and everything that's right with global innovation. At $13,000, it proves that electric vehicles don't have to be luxury items. At 157 inches long, it proves that size isn't everything. And at a 249 miles range, it proves that most of our driving needs are simpler than Detroit wants us to believe. But it also represents the unintended consequences of protectionism. By blocking affordable Chinese EVs, America hasn't protected its auto industry, it's protected auto industry profits while making electric vehicles inaccessible to the very people who need the most affordable transportation. The question isn't whether Chinese EVs will eventually reach American shores. They will, either through Mexican assembly plants, European partnerships, or eventual policy changes. The question is how many years of affordable electric mobility Americans will sacrifice in the name of protecting an industry that's increasingly competing on price rather than innovation. Somewhere in Brazil, the first Spark EUV owners are discovering what it's like to drive electric for less than the cost of a used pickup truck. They're learning that you don't need to spend $50,000 to get emission-free transportation, and they're probably wondering why the rest of the world is making it so complicated. The $13,000 electric truck America can't have isn't just a vehicle, it's a mirror reflecting our choices, priorities, and our willingness to let politics sometimes override practicality. In the end, maybe we're not protecting jobs, maybe we're just protecting prices. And as someone who likes the Chevy Spark and low prices, I really want one here. I'll see you later.